Well, welcome everybody to Passive Cash Flow for Life. Um, for those of you that are not aware, Passive Cash Flow for Life actually encompasses several things. So we do multifamily, we do single family, and we also do notes. And we just provide these opportunities for you to learn a little bit, right, about uh, some of the things that are critical to learn. So you actually make money versus maybe losing a lot of money. And we've got all sorts of different topics because, we have some incredible experts. Nicheole is the one that's speaking today. She's got 26 plus years of real estate experience, commercial real estate experience across the country, and has done incredibly well, lots and lots and lots of doors. And then the idea obviously is if you find value, whatever it is, then, we'd love to have you join our community and kind of learn along with everybody else and learn to buy multifamily, single, and pretty soon notes. But at this point, we're talking about septic systems, which is actually apropos because we were looking at something, Joanna and I, and Mel and Freddie were looking at something that actually has this. So this is perfect timing. So Nicheole, I will pass it off to you.
All right, thanks. So the first thing I want to say is that I am not an expert on septic systems. I know the basics, but I quickly run out of my knowledge when we start getting into the details and stuff like that. So what I want to do is just talk about some of the basics. And like James said, I know that there's a couple or three people who are looking at buying either manufactured housing communities or houses, rural houses that are not going to be able to be hooked up to the community water sewer. The other thing I want to say is that after today, I'm taking a hiatus. I'm gonna I'm gonna be gone the rest of the summer. So I will probably not be talking again for a couple of months at least. And so I'm hoping that this is find valuable for some people, but I know it's also not kind of a really interesting topic for multifamily and single family, but I think there's some benefit in knowing some of the basics. So let's talk. So the basic components. Oh, and I can already see I can't type. Septic systems have three components to them, basically. The septic tank, a drain field, and a soil absorption system. And this is true for almost all septic systems. So the tank itself is generally made of concrete or fiberglass, and it is where a lot of the work happens. So when the wastewater from the tank, from the home or the park flows into the tank, solids settle on the bottom, and that kind of makes sense. And it forms a sludge layer. The lighter materials, like fats and oils, float to the top and they create a scum layer. The fats and the oils become a problem if people are putting fats and oils down a septic system, because the scum kind of builds up and it can stop up your septic system. So one of the cardinal rules of septics is no fats and oils down the drains. And then between those two layers, there is a layer that's called the effluent, and that is kind of eventually what leaves the tank. All right, so the drain fields, and I've got a couple pictures here, or leach field or soil absorption field, and you're going to hear them use all of those terms. They're used with different kinds of septic systems, of which there are many, many, many. Most of them fall into three or four categories, and we're at least going to talk about the categories. but there are lots of different kinds of septic systems out there. Um, and so a drain field is just a series of underground pipes with small holes surrounded by gravel or sand. And when people talk about a lot perking or not perking, that's what it means, is that the water or the material that is in those drain fields can leach out, can perk out. They can find their way out into the general soil. And if it doesn't perk, then it really will not be able to drain. I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So you see problems with perking in properties or in land that is high clay. Um, and things like that. And there are other kinds of septic systems that can work in those kinds of systems. They're a little more, or those kind of lots, they're a little more expensive, but it isn't like you can't have a septic. You just need to figure out what's going to work for where you are. And the effluent actually flows into these pipes, and then it is distributed across the drain field. So the soil absorption system is basically it's nature's way, its own filtration system. So as the effluent percolates through the soil, bacteria and viruses are removed, which makes the water safer to re-enter the environment. So it's just basically the ground filters all of this stuff, and then the water comes back into there. What's left comes back into the groundwater and ground systems. All right. So here's just a picture of the most typical kind of drain field. So if you can kind of see this where the sewage enters over here. Whoops, I'm sorry. Can you see my little mouse when I do this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the house or the property. So one of the differences is if you have like a mobile home park with 40 places or 40 homes on it, you can have something that looks like this, but it's much, much bigger. These kind of systems are what you see most commonly, the smaller one, for 1 and 2 homes. So in several of our mobile home parks, we have a number of different septic systems. We have one that has basically one of these systems for every 2 homes. We have some that has its own system. We have a couple that have a different kind of system. So part of it depends on how much you have to spend. Part of it is dependent on what the kind of soil you have. So the key with if you're going to put 2 homes on this, or even 1 home, you have to know how many people are going to be living in that place, because there tends to be a limit. And when you are talking in a community, a lot of times the health department or the water department is going to be in charge of these, more often the health department. And they're going to tell you, based on the size of the system, how many bodies that system can support. And so 1 house, 2 house. So if you have 2 houses, a lot of these smaller systems kind of limit out at 6 to 8 to 9 people. And so you have to take that into consideration when you are looking at renting these places, etc. So the sewage comes in from the house, right? And you have an inspection pipe on both sides. You have wastewater, so you can see the sludge at the bottom and the scum at the top. and the effluent there is in the middle. This is a two-chamber system. They also have single-chamber systems. In the chamber system, you have this coming in at down here, and you have the wastewater coming out down here, so that it perks down and then the effluent comes out here. So this two-chamber system, you see everything is about on the same level, but in a single chamber system, the input comes here, you have the wastewater, the sludge, and then you have the output down here. So it is, a lot of those are gravity fed. All right. This is a two-chamber system. It is more common these days. So you clean part of it. You have nastier sludge here. It comes out, it goes over here, it purifies more, and that goes out into the wastewater, into the drain field. You have a filter here that's going to filter out particles, etc. So when you talk about, and a lot of these two chamber systems are going to have inspection pipes on both sides so that somebody can come in and look. And there tends to be a manhole cover that is close to these that you can get in and take some of this scum out if you need to be able to pump this, right? All right. So I think that kind of shows that. This is what it actually looks like. So you can kind of see here, this is the two-chamber system. It's buried. You have your two inspection pipes, and then you have a manhole cover. And then here is the drain field that goes from these over here out to here into the drain field. Okay. One of the things that has happened to me more than once is that somebody decides to have a lot of company and they drive cars up on this drain field, and guess what happens to the pipes? They go smush. And then you end up having to dig up the whole thing and replace the pipes. So one of the things we tend to do just practically is that we will put a fence, or we will put a something that says, no trespassing, or drain field, do not drive. But that is probably the most common problem that I see with these kinds of septic systems, is that people just drive up over these pipes and they break them. And so now you have the effluent kind of coming out, and all sorts of other things all over, and you have to replace the pipes. All right, so now I'm going to talk just a little bit about the types of septic systems. The one that you just saw is kind of a conventional, and it's for one or two houses. It contains the septic tank and the drain field. And the size of the tank and the drain field generally determines the number of residents. I think I already said that. This is depending on where you are. These can cost, putting in one of these systems like this can run anywhere from $3,000 to $30,000, depending on what the community rules are. And so that's one of the things, if you are looking to buy these homes or buy these properties, you need to get a sense of what it costs to replace them, what it costs to inspect them, and things like that, because there's a wide variation here. Okay. The second kind are called ATUs. They're just an aerobic treatment. So aerobic means oxygen. So there has to be oxygen and oxygen-loving bacteria in these systems. Anaerobic means no oxygen. So most of these are aerobic systems. So these are smaller, and they work really well if you don't have great soil. So we have a couple of parks that have half an acre per lot, and those the conventional type really work well. If you have these older or smaller sites, um, an aerobic treatment unit probably is something to consider. Um, and they use oxygen to break down the waste more efficiently than the conventional system. So because you have aerobic bacteria, it's going to eat a lot of the waste, it's going to eat a lot of the effluent and stuff like that. They have a separate tank where air is pumped in. So you have one that has kind of the typical tank, and then you have another one, and air is pumped in to encourage the growth of bacteria and to break down the waste. And then the effluent is released into a smaller drain field. There's actually a fairly green, one of the things that's happening, kind of the green environment for septics, is that they have little add-ons that you can use to begin to use this as gray water and for irrigation. So those things are pretty helpful as you're trying to figure out kind of how to use some of this stuff, because obviously the stuff that goes down into a septic, um, it's pretty good for growing things a lot of times. All right. The third thing is an above ground septic system, right? And these are generally used when you have a really high water table. So one of the places that I have property is in Walla Walla, Washington. It's kind of, I worked there for a long time. I was actually the medical center director of a hospital there back in the day. And Walla Walla, in terms of native language, means many waters. And so you would go to dig a basement and you hit water, right? And so the water table was really high. And so if we were going to use and it was high all around that area. So for those kinds of things, you need kind of an above ground septic system um, where where there's a lot of water or you hit bedrock really quickly. Uh, so they're also called mound systems. And they look just like that, like just look like kind of a man-made hill or mound. And they're designed for just that. They consist of a septic tank, and the drain field is built on this raised mound of sand and gravel. And the elevated setup helps to treat the effluent before it reaches the water table. So the other thing with these is that if you have a high water table, you don't want that effluent going straight into the water table before it's had a chance to be broken down a bit. Okay. So the fourth kind I want to talk about is a sand filter system. And these are similar to the conventional system, but they have an added twist, which there's a sand filter between the septic tank and the drain field. And so the effluent passes through the filter, which provides additional treatment by removing more of the contaminants. And then the wastewater goes to the drain field. So these are one of the things that you can see if your land doesn't perk. These are things to consider. If you have a property where there is a lot of clay or it just doesn't perk or it's borderline, is to consider a sand filter system between the septic tank and the drain field. And the last kind of system is an evapotranspiration system. And these are used in arid regions like in the Southwest where you have almost no rainfall. And they use the power of the sun and the wind to evaporate the wastewater. So it's a different thing altogether. And they're leaving behind a small amount of solid waste, and that waste has to be removed periodically. And so they're a great option if you need to conserve water, but they're not suitable for all climates. So, like in Florida, this just wouldn't work, right? Okay, so let's talk about now, what about larger properties where we have mobile home parks with 100 lots? You're going to see a number of different things. So one of the ones that is common is our wastewater ponds and lagoons or lagoons. And these are large, shallow ponds that allow nature to decompose all of the matter. And they typically use algae, bacteria, and sunlight to work. And so some of you have probably seen these in larger parks, and they will sometimes have kind of a sprinkler kind of system to keep some things down, but you can't use it all the time because you actually need the algae to try and break down things. They're economical, and they don't have a lot of energy or maintenance cost until you have to replace them. So you can pump some of these things out. You can get something in like a backhoe or something like that to dig all the sludge out and take it away. But that's not very cost effective. And if you have to replace them because they don't meet standards, they don't meet state criteria, you're probably talking $100,000 plus. So one of the things to be aware of is if you're looking at a park that has a lagoon or a pond, is to make sure you get somebody in to check that and to make sure that it meets current standards for being able to get rid of pollutants, and B, that it's in shape that it's going to last a whole lot longer. All right, so the next thing here is that you will also see in some of these, you see like a pumping station. So you'll have lots of septics that have it all goes into a piping system that is pumped up to like a septic house where things are chemically treated and changed and then released as gray water. What um, those are not uncommon. And again, you really need to get somebody in to make sure of what the criteria are, what the pollutants are allowed, and how often you have to test these, how often you have to treat them, et cetera, et cetera. There is a fact sheet that has a lot of different things about wastewater technology that is put out by the EPA. And I just wanted to show you, so if you're interested more in plants, small plants for properties, this is where you can find out a lot more about it. It's about small wastewater systems. And so they're a lot of times used in small communities or individual properties. They are coming up with some pre-manufactured package plants that treat a wide range of flows. And to be honest with you, I don't know much about them. I just have heard about them and I've been reading about them a little bit, but I really don't know enough to be able to talk intelligently about them, which is why I put this in here for you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about maintenance of these. You need regular inspections. So if you have a single home, for example, you can kind of look at getting somebody to come in and check it every 1 to 3 years. If you have a park or an apartment building that is out and not attached to not attached to the, the sewer system, I would be on the I would be on the side of having them just checked once a year, once every 18 months, to make sure that things are going well. You can fix a lot of things, treat a lot of things before they really go bad, but once they go bad, you got a big problem. So better to catch things in advance. The parks we have that have septics for every home or every two homes, we put those on a rotating schedule, and so that every home is checked every 2 to 3 years, depending on the age of the septic system. And we typically have contract with a septic company who pumps these things, to check on so many every month, to pump that we will in the contract tell them that for what we're paying them. So we're going to pay them a monthly fee, and they're going to check so many homes every month. And for that fee, they're going to pump, we get with that contract 1 pump per month, say, or 1 or 2 pumps per month, because you really do need to put that on a schedule of um, of of pumping them every 2 to 3 years. And so it's better to just have it so that it's part of your general operating procedure. Some of the older systems that you're trying to baby along so that you don't have to replace them, you're going to probably be pumping them more often. So most of the time, they're going to tell you in a single family house, it's every 3 to 5 years. For our parks, we do every 2 to 3 years to make sure they're pumped, because the last thing I want is problems like that. This is where we talk about is be careful of what goes down the drain. So I talked already about fats, but the other common thing that happens is when you use too much water at once. If you kind of go back and think about those tanks, that all of the water that you use goes into the tank, and then it settles, and then it goes over to the other tank, or it goes out into the drain field. If you are doing like laundry and taking a bath and running the water at the same time, you are going to flood those, and then they don't work. So one of the most common things you get, we hear people talking about they're backing up, water's backing up, and it's awful, is it's not that the tank isn't working. The most likely cause is that somebody has been using too much water and they have flooded the tank. And the solution for that is to just wait and tell people to not use the water for a little bit. Now, this can also happen if you have really big, bad rainstorms. You can get the system over it kind of gets overstressed with that, because you have water in the ground, etc. And it can't come out because of of how much water is in. So one of the things we do is that when we have people moving into these homes or into these parks like this, we have a fact sheet on septics and how they work and things to be aware of. And we talk about not putting any fats down the drain. We talk about not using too much water at any one time. Um, and so I think those are probably the two most common things. I can tell you that people call a lot with their systems backing up. Well, not a lot, but people call, and most often it is just that it's not really that you have a problem with the septic system. It's that they have been using a whole lot of water all at once, and the system just can't handle it. All right. So one of the things, so that was just what I was saying is conserving water. Simple. So we always try and fix leaks. We use low flow feature fixtures. Um, we spread out laundry loads. So we try and tell people not to do 3 loads or 4 loads in a day. I mean, it's a change in how you have to behave a little bit if you have septic systems, but it can make a big difference in keeping the septic system. Um, we already talked about heavy vehicle. Keep vehicles off your drain wheels and construction equipment. So we almost bought a park in Alabama. It was out the kind of out the back door, the back side of the, oh gosh, what's that big army base that's in Georgia? I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. It's the biggest one in Georgia. But the backside to that base comes out in Alabama, and our park was right there. And then we looked at buying another park just down the road from it. And what ended up happening is that because we always check the septic system, right? Well, the previous owner had tried to get a little extra money, and they had a big stand of trees in the back of the property that they had um, sold. And so this construction equipment is coming in to cut down these trees and carrying them away with these big, these big rigs that you kind of put logs on. Well, I'll bet you can guess what happened to that drain field. It was smushed. And it would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars to fix it. So we just passed on that. But that is not uncommon. I've had that happen with 2 or 3 cars parked on a drain field because somebody was having a party, right? So you also need to know clearly where those drain fields are, and you keep them clear. You don't plant trees or shrubs near them. And so you end up having an area that is grass with nothing on it, and you can't let people plant something that's going to have a deep root system. So like flowers are fine, most flowers, but shrubs and trees, they just they'll put the roots right through the drain field sometimes. And grading makes a difference to prevent standing water or flooding. So remember we talked about the system can get overloaded. Well, if you have a lot of rain or something like that, and the water is standing after a rain in a couple of your homes, those are the septics that are likely to get to get so they're not working. And so the solution is to just grade so the water runs away, that it doesn't go down into the ground. All right. So before you buy, you really need to get an experienced septic system company to assess your system and all its components as part of your due diligence. The other thing we always do is you most of the time we're always checking with the water company, with the health department about things. But on these septics, we're also going to check with the state to find out what their treatment and testing requirements are. So, and if you have something where you have to test what are the requirements for you to pass the test, and you need to find out if your system is going to pass that test. And if not, is it grandfathered in or not? But the other question is it safe or not? Because while some added regulations are I you know is you could argue how necessary some of them are, but some of them really are about safety. So even if you have your grandfathered in, the reason I'm talking about safety and what are the general requirements is because there's a lot of people out there these days that are suit happy. And you need to know if your system doesn't meet the current standards, is it safe or is it dangerous? And that can be something that you can talk to people about. Check with the local water company and the health department about your property and any problems they've had. So one of the properties that we bought down in Dublin, Georgia, a while back, it was an REO. The bank had taken it back, and there was like 101 sites on it or something like that. And but there were um, citation after citation after citation after citation from the health department because of the septic systems and the roads. And so we got that 100 unit mobile home park for about $450,000. But we had to put a bunch of money into it to try and clear those. And we actually went in and part of our due diligence and talked to the health department and made a plan with them for what needed to be done and how it needed to be done. And they gave us, I can't remember if it was 6 months or a year to get that done. But we actually worked in cooperation with them rather than having them be an enemy, because they don't want to have to close things down. Most of them, they really want to have the issues fixed. And so it worked great. And so one of the things we always do, if we check with the health department anyway, but if we have septics or wells, we're particularly going to talk to them about what we have and what the requirements are and any suggestions they have. And there's a lot of very knowledgeable people out there about these systems. All right, so I think that's what I want to say. We do have an online course if anybody's interested in that. It's about 60 hours and 36 modules. It is for multifamily. It talks about mobile home parks, self-storage, and apartment buildings. And we talk about finding markets. We talk about acquisitions. We talk about raising money legally and talking to private investors. We talk about managing property managers and building a business. And so it basically it doesn't focus just on acquisitions, which is what most classes in multifamily do. If you're interested, go look at passivecashflowforlife.com. We're going to be doing our partners, Jane and Sharon, we're going to be doing a real estate webinar on July 20th on virtually buying real estate. That date has to change, and I don't think we have come up with a new date. But the $27 early bird special is still, if you think you're going to be interested in doing that when that comes around, I would encourage you to go in and sign up for the early bird special, and then we'll let you know as days change. All right. We record all of these and they go up on our YouTube channel. And you see that third item there on that is our YouTube channel. This should be up by the end of the week. And so we also have about a year and a half of teaching Tuesdays there. So there's 60 or so topics up there that I would encourage you to go take a look at. Please, if you go to the YouTube channel, subscribe and follow us and all that good stuff. It helps a lot with us. I think that's it, and I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to turn it over for questions.
That was great, Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody?
So I have a question. So, in terms of all the different systems, right? Like I'm looking at this aerobic treatment units and stuff like that. If a field won't perk, um, or even if it does perk, what is the most cost-effective way to set these up? Is it just kind of the old standby in terms of just a regular, septic two-compartment tank for a couple of homes, or uh, um, the aerobic units better, or which one of those? Is there one that you would say if you started a park today that you would use that? And you can't say lagoon.
No, I probably wouldn't say lagoon. I, I think that if the land perks well, a one tank or two tank conventional system works great. The if you have the room, if you don't have the room between homes, then I would go with the aerobic. So it's really the size of the lot that for me is going to determine a lot of things. But I would, that is where you start getting some help from some of the people who know more than me about septic systems and what would work best. Because not only aerobic is a category, and there's a lot of different systems under the aerobic, and there's a lot of different systems under the conventional. And I don't pretend to know a lot about that. So I would really find experts. So one of the things I really wanted people to go away from is just some basic information about septics, and know that it is something you really need an expert to help you figure out what you need and if what you have is working well or not.
To add to that, Nicole, so are you, I mean, of course you would recommend for us to do this after due diligence or after the LOI has been accepted, correct? For us
Correct.
to hire somebody. With your experience, I mean, I know some basic information to ask the county, like, like you said, like what is their requirements, and what what do they need to pass through for inspection? Is there anything else besides those questions that you're stating that would be good for us to ask?
Yeah, if you go to our due diligence checklist, there are several questions in there for septics and things like that. But basically, it's, what are your testing requirements? Have you had any problems with any of them? Do you know of any issues that I should be aware of? Um, kind of, um, you can talk with I would talk with so most of in small communities, it's the health department that's going to be the people you talk to. So before you hire somebody, Joe would just talk to some of those people. They're likely to know if the property has a problem or not. And they're likely to know of people in the area who are reputable, who can actually, you could hire, who could go in and give you the scoop on some of this stuff. But two of the big things with, if you're not attached to city water sewer, is you really need to understand what's going on with well and with septic, because those can just scuttle a deal really quickly if you're not on top of things. And well is even worse than septic in terms of needing to be tested, and tests being sent into the state or the county, and needing to keep records and treatment records. And most of the time that's just hired out on a contract with somebody to come in and both test and treat. So, but the good news is with well, you don't have a water bill most of the time. You have a well. And so you actually end up not spending as much money as you would if you were paying water bills. But you also need to know the flow, how much water is actually coming out of those wells, and is it going to last for the time you need it to? Is it enough to carry the park well into the future?
Okay, thank you so much for that information. This was
You bet.
amazing.
Joanna has a gift of talking to people and they tell her everything.
I should have such a gift, right?
Yes, we all should. So, but she's very, very good at it. So,
Yeah, I can tell. Other questions? We have about 8 minutes, and so if anybody has questions about anything else real estate related, please ask them.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi,
It's Emma.
Emma.
Hi. Have you happened to hear anything about new septic systems that are required in some states where they are improved in the sense of the nitrogen content that will make the system more environmentally friendly? And eventually they will become a requirement for
Um,
everybody to change when they change them.
I don't, so a lot of those are some of the newer systems I was talking about that's coming out. I don't know a lot about it, but what I think I know is that they are going to be for communities and not individual houses or one or two kind of conventional septic systems. But that's one of the reasons that I'm saying you need to talk to the state and the county, kind of your local public health, to figure out what are their requirements, and what is coming down the pike, because it varies a lot, state to state, community to community. So
Mhm.
the aerobic systems are going to take a lot of the nitrogen out of the effluent anyway. I mean, that's part of what the bacteria do.
Right,
They're
right.
nitrogen loving bacteria. So I don't know a whole lot about it. I do know that there's some changes that are being talked about. Where they actually are, I would doubt that it's going to be required across the country anytime soon.
Okay. Okay.
That's a good question.
Uh, Thank you. Thank you. I can tell you that in Anne Arundel County, they actually have a credit if you build a new house and you opt for the type of newer system, they will give you a credit towards the materials and labor.
Ah, okay. Well, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Anne Arundel is kind of it's kind of coastal, if you will.
Yeah.
There's high
Yeah.
water tables, there's a lot of other things, and it's Maryland.
Yeah. It's more complicated. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay, well, I can't see keeping us here if nobody has any questions, and so I'm sure everybody knows we're just doing these, we have moved to doing one topic a week. And so the first week of the month, we're going to be talking multifamily related. The second week of the month, we're talking single family, and that's Jane and Sharon for right now. And the third week, we're talking notes. And the fourth week, we're going to be talking about bringing your deals, whatever it is, and we'll try and put everybody's brain together to try and figure out what you might be able to do with that to make something work. All right, so at this point, then we don't have anything following this. So I'm going to then say goodbye. Well, I'm going to turn it over to James and let him finish this.
Thanks.
Enjoy your hiatus.
I will. I will. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming. I know septic systems, it sounded like an interesting topic, which a lot of people don't talk about, but obviously it can be a huge issue if you don't know how to do it properly. So thanks, Nicheole. That was awesome. And I hope everyone has a fantastic July 4th. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.